Good morning, New Journey. Hey, welcome. Everybody have a good Christmas? Yeah, well, we hope so. We hope you are just glad to be here this morning. We are glad to have you. Would you guys stand and join us as we enter into a time of worship? I love this time of year, and I know obviously Christmas is a fun season and stuff, but New Year's is just an exciting time for me too, as I just think about the year ahead and what it means, and a time to just, not necessarily New Year's resolutions, but just thinking about, man, what does God have in store for us this next year? And what do I want to do? What do I want to accomplish? What do I want to learn? How do I want to grow? And so this morning, I just hope that you are coming into this season with just some joy and excitement. And maybe if you've had a rough season, a rough Christmas, this is a time, this is a haven for you to just come and enter into his presence. And I trust that you will be touched and renewed and restored as we just enter into worship together. So would you guys just pray with me as we start this morning? God, we thank you so much for this morning, and we thank you for this special time and place that we can come and enter into your presence. And God, amidst the joy and the excitement, and also sometimes the hard parts, the sadness that come with holidays sometimes, Lord, we just bring it all to you in this moment, and we just lay it at your feet. And this morning we choose instead to focus on you and your goodness, your faithfulness to us, your sovereignty and your lordship in our lives. So Lord, this morning I just pray that you'd be glorified and lifted up here, that you would cause us just to see your face this morning. In your name we pray. Amen.
I was lost with a broken heart. You picked me up, now I'm set apart. From the ash I am born again, forever safe in the Savior's hands. You are more than my words can say. I'll follow you, Lord, for all my days. Fix my eyes following your ways, forever free in unending grace. 'Cause you are my freedom. We lift you higher, lift you higher. Your love never ending. Oh, oh, oh. You are alive in us. Nothing can take your place. You are all we need. Your love has set us free. Whoa, whoa.
He's thankful he's alive this morning. Thankful to be alive.
After Christmas, let's praise him for how grateful we are for him.
The song is called Grateful.
This is the day that you have made. What shoulder our weakness, and your strength becomes our own. You're making me like you, clothing me in white, bringing ashes. For you will have your bride, free of all her guilt, and rid of all shame, and known by her true name. And it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. And it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my
During this last song, as usual, we want to invite people up who just want to just come forward, just maybe to take a step or to spend time just kneeling before him or being prayed for. And this morning, Kate McCauley has asked for special prayer, and so I just invite you, Kate, to come forward at this time. And she's just asking for people to just gather around her and pray. This is what the body does. This is what the body is for. And I'm thankful that this church just knows the power of prayer and the power of just surrounding each other with love, with care, and with prayer. So just invite you to join Kate this morning where she's at. And if you are someone else that needs just to come forward, we just invite you to do that. If you want to come to the middle, people will gather around you as well. If you want time by yourself, just go to the outsides and just take that time with him. Just enter in during this time. This one is Broken Vessels or Amazing Grace.
all these pieces broken and scattered, mercy gathered, mended and whole. see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life.
God, without your amazing grace, we would all be lost, and not only lost, but with no hope. God, this morning we thank you for your grace. We thank you that you meet us right where we're at. God, I just pray for Kate right now that you would just be near to her in the midst of where she's at right now. And God, I thank you just for her courage to call upon the church and say, I just want you to gather around me in prayer. God, I pray that we would all be so open and so courageous to ask for prayer and to just be surrounded by your people. God, I pray that your love would be near this morning to all who need it. And that, God, you would cause us to see you this morning. God, in the midst of where we're at, what we're facing, and God, the joys and the heartache, Lord, you're there with us. So, Lord, we just thank you for that. We thank you for your people. We thank you for this time of coming together in fellowship and worship. God, would you be lifted up and glorified in the midst of your people this morning. In your name, amen. We do thank you, church, for just entering into this time of worship and knowing that we're not just singing songs, but that we're encountering his presence, and we're doing that together. So we just invite you to take the next few moments, the New Journey 5, just continue that time of fellowship, greet some people around you, give out a hug or two. There's refreshments in the well, and we'll bring you back in just a few minutes.
Your heart, what stirs your soul, what matters come to mind. The cares you keep, the thoughts you think, it's not all wasted time. Seeking you will find. Joy still comes in the morning. Hope still walks with the hurting. If you're still alive and breathing, praise the Lord. Don't stop dancing and dreaming. There's still good news worth repeating. So lift your head and keep singing. Praise the Lord. The years roll by, we wonder why we lost our way from home. Our Father finds the child inside. We left for growing old.
Hey, New Journey. Welcome back. We are going to get started. We have a few announcements for you this morning. I am Mike Carr, Worship Department Director here. Pastor Brian is off with family for the holiday today. So I'm just going to bring you a few announcements, and then Pastor Noelle will be bringing the message today. So the first one is that next week starts small group sign-up. So back there in the back where our wonderful bass player Mark Leitner is standing, there is a table that next week will have the different groups for small groups. So we do ours in kind of a semester format. They start over every few months, and so next month will be the month to get signed up for your small groups. So remember to do that. And then the second is there's no youth group tonight. So just a reminder for those youth involved that there's no youth group tonight. And then the third one, there is Debbie Waller and Ken have been doing some work with a grief ministry here at the church. And so if you are one that has made an ornament for to represent a loved one and to honor them over the holidays, those are up here and can be picked up. And then the last one is our final reminder about the outreach planning meeting next week. So that is January 5th after church. If you want to be involved in the outreach planning meeting, there's a lot of different events that go on during the year, and so there will be a meeting after church next week. You can RSVP to Nancy Halderman or by emailing office@newjourneycommunity.com. That way they know how many to plan for and what food to prep. So just let them know if you plan to attend that meeting after church next week. All right, thank you. Pastor Noelle.
Am I on? Oh, there I'm on. Hi, guys. Happy, awkward little couple days between Thanksgiving and New Year's. I hope it's going wonderful for you, and I hope some of you guys had a break. I did. It was awesome. So if you guys didn't know, I am the children's pastor, so I hope the children are doing okay today. But I want to talk about the word procrastination just for a second. I'll procrastinate on the rest of my sermon. But I am a chronic procrastinator, so I take this strange amount of joy in procrastinating, and a lot of people over the years have told me, procrastinating is this terrible thing, you're going to regret it, and you're always going to be working really hard at the last minute. And here's the thing, I like working hard at the last minute because I'm good at it. I'm not good at working ahead because I get bored and distracted. But if I know something is due the next morning, I'm on it. So pressure is good for me. For example, in college, in high school, I used to cram for tests the day of, and I'd get an A, and I'd be like, everybody would hate me for it, but I'd be like, I'm normally bad at tests. I'm just good because procrastination makes me a better studier. But my best and most proud procrastination moment. So I had a 20-page paper and needed 10 scholarly sources. We had, it's a college class, so I knew about it from the beginning of the semester, but I decided to write it 24 hours. In 24 hours, find the sources, everything. I'm pretty proud of it. It got an A. I'm like, that's awesome. But college is a great place for procrastination, but real life sucks with procrastination. Yes, you can do stuff at your job. You still get it done on time, but you procrastinate it. But if I procrastinate on laundry, I don't have clothing to wear. And if I procrastinate on dishes or trash, my house smells bad. So as I've gotten older, procrastination is no longer the crutch I use. And the really bad part about procrastination with me is it floods into every other area of my life, including the spiritual side. So I have this bad habit of procrastinating some of my walk with Christ, which to you is like, oh my gosh, but I'm like, yes, I do that. I'm aware of it. It sucks, and I'm trying to get better. But there is something that God has been teaching me that I want to talk to you about today that I've been procrastinating for years. He's been trying to drill it into my head, and I've just not been listening. And it's really hit me in the last few months, and God's been like, this is what I want to teach you. It's time. So the due date is now. And I want to teach you about it too because it's something that is deep on my heart, and it is this idea of the word enough. So there's a book I used to love reading when I was a kid. So you guys might have read it. Had me hooked from the first couple lines. I'll read them for you. It said, I hate you, Christy Miller shouted at the reflection in the closet mirror door. With a wild grrr, she wadded up her beach towel and heaved it at the mirror, watching it wobble and distort her lanky proportions. Are you hooked? Anybody else hooked? I was pretty hooked. See, it's that Summer Promise by Robin Jones Gunn, literally the first tiny paragraph. And 11-year-old me loved this because that was me. And I'm guessing a lot of you guys are the same way. When you're 11 or 12 and you look in the mirror, it's not always the most, you don't love what you see. There's parts of you that you're like, I'm not tall enough, I'm not big enough yet, or whatever. I just didn't love myself back then. And Christy Miller, the character in the book, spent the rest of the book, and a lot of her other books, wrestling with this idea, thinking that she's not enough. So I do that. You know, you compare yourself to others. You have this idea in your head of what you want to be, like this perfect picture, and then you look in the mirror and you're like, that's not who I am. And maybe you guys do that too, this idea that maybe I don't look the way I want to. Maybe my personality's, I'm weird, I'm quirky, I don't like it. Or maybe you're not as successful as you wanted to be, or your life's not looking the way you want to, your habits. And that's the kind of one of the ideas I want to talk about today. If you guys have your Bibles, we're going to be kind of jumping today, mainly between two verses, but the first one's going to be in 1 Kings 19, so you guys are welcome to turn to that. But I want to give you the definition of enough, because it's going to keep coming up throughout the sermon, the word enough, so you might as well define it. The dictionary.com definition is adequate for the want or need, sufficient for the purpose or to satisfy desire. So essentially, the word enough means it is sufficient to satisfy whatever need or want there is. So it can complete that need or satisfy it. I want you to keep that definition in mind, and then we're going to go in 1 Kings. And so some background, we're going to be in 1 Kings 19. It's going to be 1 through 5, but some background from 18. There is this prophet, his name is Elijah. This is one of my favorite passages, by the way, but Elijah is, if you don't know what a prophet is someone who God spoke through in the Old Testament. And in Elijah's time, it's kind of a crappy time to be a prophet, because there's the most evil king and queen of Israel that ever lived, King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. If you've ever heard somebody called a Jezebel, it came from this queen. So, like, they're that bad. But what happened was, basically, that queen and that king did not believe in God, the Almighty God. They believed in this fake god named Baal. And they had their own prophets, their own people that talked to Baal. So Elijah was like, I'm going to show them down. I'm going to show them who the real God is. He had an actual showdown on a mountain where basically he said, if your God can create fire, he's the real God, but I bet my God can create fire. And in the end, he's right. Our God created fire. Their God didn't, and then he kind of killed them all. But that's the more gruesome part. So the king and queen were not happy at all, obviously, that all their prophets were gone. So that's kind of where we come into at verse 1 in chapter 19. It says, it should be on the screen. Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them. So she's saying she's going to kill him. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went on a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord. He said, take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the bush and fell asleep. Okay, so Elijah hated himself and was actually suicidal in this part. He's like, I cannot handle an entire nation being against me. And he had this idea in his head, I am not enough for this. If you're going on in the passage, I'm going to summarize it, but you can read on if you want to. Going on in the passage, the angels came and fed him and slept, so naps are important, and so are food. Then God told Elijah to go to a nearby mountain, and this is one of my favorite passages in the Bible, this part in particular. There was wind, there was fire, there was an earthquake, and God wasn't in any of that. God was in the gentle whisper, and God spoke to Elijah and breathed life and purpose into him. See, Elijah did not think he was enough, and he just was like, I am not enough to handle this. I am not enough to go through this. I'm just not enough. And God breathed and spoke and said, yes, you are. I want you to know that this entire sermon was inspired by the song Enough by Elias Strummer. I heard it for the first time about 2 or 3 months ago, and the first time I heard it, I cranked my radio up. I immediately looked up the song as soon as I was at a stop sign, and I wrote it down. I've been listening to it forever. It just struck me. It hit me deeply. And the lyrics for the song, the first verse are going to be up on the screen. It says, I am not what I make. I am who you have made me to be. I am not what I've done. I am loved unconditionally. I am not loved by the measure of love that I bring. I am not who I know. I am known by the King of all kings. This first verse is talking about how you and I and everyone else, we're enough. We are sufficient. And this doesn't talk about a personality or our job or how much money we make or like our attributes, who likes us, who doesn't like us. It doesn't talk anything about us, our marital status, our job, our physical appearance, our race, anything. We're not defined by the things we define ourselves by daily. See, like, have anyone else here defined themselves daily by things like that? Your job, your looks, how much money you make, who you're married to, who your friends are. It goes on. The line that truly changed me in the verse is, I am not loved by the measure of love that I bring. It's not what you bring to the table that makes you enough. So all these things that I'm talking about, my value is not based on how much I love others or how much I serve them. It's not even based on how much others love me. And all these things I've told you are the things that make us not enough, the things that make us believe we're not enough. So I have a piece of paper that I stole from the office. It's never going back. So there are things that we like to define ourselves by. Job, put a little star there because I don't want to write out job. Money, looks, status, success, whatever. You can see, if you can't see, I'm sorry, but they're pretty faint. They're there, but what happens when your best friend decides they don't like you anymore? You get to erase it. What happens if you lose your job? Or you don't have as much money anymore? Or, well, let's just say as you've gotten older, or you've either maybe you're not as funny as you used to be, or maybe you look in the mirror and you're not satisfied with where you're at. Well, too bad for you. Looks like you're not enough according to this paper, because it's all gone. All of those things can be erased. But I also stole this from the office. It will be returned. Our value is written in Sharpie. And if you know anything about Sharpie on paper, you really can't erase it. I'm sure there's a way to get it off of walls, but I've never been able to find a way to get it off of paper. So let me take an eraser and destroy it a little bit. I can't get rid of it. In fact, it's bled through. See, our value is written in Sharpie from the day we're born, from before the day we're born. Jesus writes our value on us. And each one of us has the same value. We are all loved by God. We are all given value and purpose, and we are told, I am enough. You are enough by God. And every person is born with this priceless value written in Sharpie from all over us from the day we're born. Our value is not based on us. And I know that sounds weird, because a lot of times the rest of the world is like, well, you're not valuable, you're not important, you're not enough if you can't be whatever this. God's weird because God says you're enough because I say so. And it's very simple. And there's this basic lie that a lot of us believe, that lie that says I'm not enough. Maybe somebody told you that, maybe somebody you trusted and loved, someone who, even your family, or teacher, or whatever. Maybe somebody didn't tell you that. Maybe you've been telling yourself that. Maybe you just look in the mirror and you look at the magazine and you're like, nope, I don't know. But there's this idea, it has a root somewhere in your life that says, I am not enough. And everyone has it at some point. Jesus breathed life and purpose and enoughness, I know it's not a word, it is now, enoughness into Elijah, telling him that he was enough on that mountain. So God breathed the same into us. Nothing Elijah did, said, or accomplished made it that way. He was just super bummed out under the bush saying, let me die. He was done. And actually, if you read on, God let him be done. God said, okay, pass on the reins. You're good. You can retire. And there was value in that, but he still breathed the life into him. And just like Elijah, we always have the value. It's whether or not we believe the value is there. Because it's there. You just have to believe it. So my first challenge in the sermon is this side of insecurity that we all have, the side that says I'm not enough. I want you to look at that side. And it's really uncomfortable to look at it. It's really, really, I don't like it. That's why I'm procrastinated on it. This uncomfortable feeling of I'm not enough. The first challenge is God already breathed your enoughness before you were born. You just have to believe it. See, telling a story from, I used to substitute teach. There were a lot of kids that got bullied, and yes, we can kind of punish the bullies, but we can't. I remember sitting by this girl who was just getting told, you're terrible, you're awful. Obviously, I told the other kid, hey, go to the office, but I sat down with her. I'm like, do you want to know a secret? She's like, what? And I'm like, only you get to believe what somebody tells you about yourself. You don't have to believe them. And she's like, see, it's that same feeling came on me, and maybe it's coming on you right now, that feeling of, wait, I'm already valuable. I just have to choose to believe it. That's the first challenge. The first challenge of believing you are enough. There's a flip side, though, to this enoughness, this insecurity. There's pride. If you know anything about pride and insecurity, they're basically the same coin. They're just different sides. So the pride side of it is, do you believe Jesus is enough? Because how are you going to believe you're enough if you don't believe Jesus is enough? Because if Jesus isn't enough to you, then Jesus isn't enough to write your own purpose, your own life, tell you he's enough. So if we understand our value comes from Christ, because he says so, we have to believe that he is enough. I have the next part of the second verse. It's yeah, that's it. Sorry. You are maker made visible, holding the world in your hands. You are patient and merciful, giver of grace without end, satisfied simply by being who you've always been. You are infinite love, and you prove it again and again. So look at the lyrics for a minute. The lyrics are saying all the reasons, in a very condensed version, why Jesus is enough. And if you want, you could fill massive amounts of books with why Jesus is enough. Jesus is enough. He made the world. He created it. He loved it. He chose to come down in it, not be separate from it. He has never changed, and he's perfect in love. And for some reason, he still loves us, even when we make mistakes. If that's not enough, I don't know what is. And I know it's kind of crazy to think, what if I don't believe Jesus is enough? I mean, if somebody told me you don't believe Jesus is enough, I'm like, whoa, no, of course I do. He's Jesus. But we do. If we doubt we're enough, you don't believe Jesus is enough because you don't believe Jesus is enough to breathe that purpose into you. If you don't believe God can sustain you through hard times, is Jesus enough? So I have two examples in the Bible. The first one's kind of going back into the Christmas story we've been looking over the last couple weeks. If you look at the life of Jesus, he fulfilled over 300 prophecies. Some scholars say 400. Even just looking at it logically, just think through this. If Jesus was enough to fulfill 300-ish prophecies in 35 years, couldn't he be enough for you and me? We're going to turn to Mark chapter 5, and we're going to be in the second part of verse 24. I'll give you a tiny bit of warning, not as much as last time, sorry. I think that's going to be on the screen too. And there it is. So I'll start reading it. It says, a large crowd followed and pressed on him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had had. Yet instead of getting better, she got worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped and she felt her body, that she was freed from suffering. And all at once Jesus noticed that power had gone out of him. He turned around the crowd and asked, who touched my clothes? You see the people crowding around you, the disciple answered, and yet you ask, who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. The woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. He said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace, you are freed from your suffering. This woman had been bleeding for 12 years. Now, she had already pooled all of her money and resources into healing this. But I also want you to understand some of the history of this. Because back in that time, it wasn't just physical pain and physical issues. There was also a social and shameful issue involved with this. Because in that time, there was Jewish law that said that if you were bleeding, you're unclean. So if you cut your arm and you're bleeding, you're unclean. That sucks. But if somebody else touches you while you're bleeding, they're unclean too. So for 12 years, she's deprived of touch because it takes a whole ritual to be clean again, and you can't be bleeding. So she's unclean. She's deprived of touch. She has no more money. She has nothing. And there's this place of desolation and financial ruin and hopelessness and shame that she heard about this Jesus who had healed some people. And by some crazy amount of faith, she thought, if I just touch his clothes that he's wearing, that's enough. I'll be healed. And she believed in that moment that Jesus' clothing was enough. She believed Jesus was enough. So I have this little problem where I like to do things by myself, and I think I can. And most of the time, it's not a problem because I like thinking I'm self-sufficient and independent. But there's a couple of, more than a couple. There's multiple times in my life where it's come back to bite me. My strongest example, again, is from college. I promise I wasn't a crazy college kid, but apparently I had bad ideas. So I decided I wanted to bunk the beds myself, which you should never do, for the record. Yeah, just throwing that out there. The way the beds work at college, there's a post, like there's one side, and then there's a frame, like the metal frame, and you just kind of click it into there. It sounds easy, it's not. And then to bunk them, there's pegs on each of the sides, like the four corners, and then you put it on top and you do the same thing. Sounds simple. It is simple. It's kind of hard, but it's simple. So I thought, I put the bottom bed together on my own. I could do the top bed. No, I could not. It resulted in one of the sides, the wood getting like stripped down into. I think I sliced it. And I'd used duct tape to hold it together till the end of the year, and I just replaced it. So, and everybody was like, "Why did you try to do that yourself?" I'm like, "Because I thought I could." So I struggle with this idea that pretty much everything I can do in my own power. And again, just like procrastination, just like every other part of your life, these things bleed into every other area, including my walk with Christ. So I think I'm okay. I think I'm good on my own until I'm really struggling, and then I'll ask God for help. But that's not how God works. God is not this backup generator when the power goes out that just I flip on when I need it. See, Jesus wants to be my enough. Jesus wants to be my sustainer, my friend, my healer, my king, my father. See, what about you guys? I bet at some point, maybe some of you guys maybe you're like me and you have this idea in your head that you don't need God's help. That yes, I'm a Christian, but I don't, and I'll read my Bible, but I don't really need to ask. I don't need help with this. I don't need his guidance in making this decision, whatever that looks like. And you're perfectly capable of doing it on your own. Maybe you feel like you only need God when it gets a little rough. See, but if we had the faith of this woman who thought touching his clothes is enough, what if we set aside our pride? What if I set aside my pride? And I actually lived in the truth that no matter what happens, good or bad, Jesus is my sustainer and Jesus is enough. Jesus is enough to get through the pain, death of a loved one, fighting with our family, our broken past, our terrible workplace, sickness, poverty, anything else. Jesus is enough. And I used to have this idea when I was a kid that Jesus would send, they told me Jesus is enough to get you out of bad situations, I thought that meant Jesus would send in this spiritual helicopter and come and save me, which would be awesome, but that's not how it works. Jesus walks with us. He gives us what we need. Not always what we want, but what we need. So I wanted to talk to you guys about this idea of enough, because the Bible verses, the song, it hit a hard chord because maybe you're like me and you have this idea in your head that I'm not enough because someone told me, or I'm not enough because I've spent my whole life looking in the mirror thinking that. Or maybe you're like me and you're like, I don't know if Jesus is enough to get me through this, and I don't know if I actually think I need Jesus, because maybe he's not enough for me to need him. I don't know. But I procrastinated on so many things in my life. And I'm done procrastinating on this. I'm done procrastinating on the idea that Jesus is enough, that I am enough, because he tells me so. And I think some of you guys, maybe God is trying to whisper in your ears today saying, hey, it's time for you to stop procrastinating too. So I have two challenges for you. And some of you guys may resonate with just one or the other or none. Either way, the first challenge is it's time to believe the value God placed on you. See, he told you were enough a long time ago. He wrote it on your name. He wrote it with you before you were born, to the point where it bleeds through. It cannot be erased. But we have to make the choice to live in that. Are we going to live like we're enough, or are we going to live like we're not? It doesn't matter if we live like we're not. We still are, because he said it. He breathed that into us. So maybe you're here and you're a teenager, and you think, God's been telling you maybe to talk to somebody you don't want to, invite someone to church, maybe tell your parents about Jesus, serve somewhere here, and you're like, I'm not enough to do that. Maybe you're here and you've spent your whole life believing the things other people have told you or the things you've told yourself, and you don't believe you're enough. Maybe you just retired and you're like, well, I don't have my job anymore. What's my purpose? And you just don't think, I'm not enough anymore. We are enough, and we have always been, but it's not because of anything anyone in here has ever done. It's because God wrote it, and God already breathed it into us. So it's time to accept and just believe that God-given value. And my second challenge is maybe you're here and you're struggling with believing God can get you through something, whatever that is. Maybe you're like me, and you're fiercely independent. You don't like asking for help. And yeah, God is enough or whatever, but you can get through it on your own. It's not how it works. Jesus is enough to be our sustainer, our Father, our friend. Jesus is enough to lean on when we're in grief and pain and anger and frustration and hopelessness and things that seem like there's no solution. Jesus is enough to help us get through our pride so we can take his lead and rely on him. And for those of you who have never accepted Christ before, Jesus is enough for you. Even if you're just sitting there like, I don't know him. He's enough. So band, as you come up, we're going to sing the song I talked about, which seems kind of obvious since I brought it up a lot. And I really want you to listen to it. I want you to make it your prayer. I want you to take this time to search your hearts. The front is open if you need to pray. Take the friend with you if you want. Do what you need to do in this time. And figure out if you truly believe and you are living the truths that you are enough and God is enough.
This time, the ushers will also come around for the offering for those who call New Journey home.